Among the shining halls of Asgard there dwelt one who was unlike all others, the watchman of the gods, the guardian of Bifrost, the ever-vigilant sentinel whose eyes pierced the night and whose ears caught the faintest stirrings of the world. His name was Heimdall, though the skalds gave him many titles. Some called him the whitest of the Aesir, for his brightness was as the gleam of sunlight on pure snow. Others named him Helinski, the ram-horned one, for his strength and his cry. Still others spoke of him as Gullantani, golden-toothed, for his teeth were said to gleam like burnished gold. Heimdall was set apart from the others, for his charge was unlike any god's. While Odin wandered in search of wisdom, Thor strode forth to battle giants, and Freyja wove the mysteries of Seer, Heimdall remained by the rainbow bridge of Bifrost, standing sentinel at the very threshold of Asgard. None might pass without his notice, for his gaze reached across the 9 realms, and his ears could hear grass grow in the meadows and wool lengthen on the sheep's back. No secret movement, no creeping step of foe or stranger, could elude him. The skalds sang that Heimdall needed less sleep than a bird, that his sight was as keen by night as by day, and that he could hear for 100 leagues. Thus he was the wall against which the enemies of the gods would break, the eye that never closed, the ear that never failed. Yet though he bore this great burden, he was not grim or joyless. He was noble and bright, a god who embodied vigilance as a sacred duty rather than a weary curse. It is said that his dwelling was Himinbjörg, the heavenly cliffs, set high where the Bifrost met the sky. There he held watch, feasting upon mead when his eyes were not fixed on the horizon, his horn Gyllerhorn resting close at hand. For with Gyllerhorn he would one day summon the gods to their last battle, its blast echoing across the 9 realms, shattering silence with the cry of doom. But Heimdall's tale is not only that of a watchman. His story begins in mystery, born of 9 mothers at the edge of the sea, nursed on the strength of earth, sea, and sky. He is a bringer of order, a giver of gifts to humankind, a rival of Loki, and the herald of Ragnarök itself. His life is bound to the fate of the cosmos, for as long as he stands watch, the gods endure, and when he sounds his horn, the end shall come. Thus do the skalds speak, Heimdall, the shining one, the sleepless sentinel, the golden-toothed guardian, whose presence is both comfort and warning, whose destiny is bound to the twilight of the world. Few among gods or men can boast of such a birth as Heimdall. While most sprang from the union of father and mother, or from the mingling of giants and gods, Heimdall was the son of 9 mothers, all sisters, daughters of the sea. Their names, Jalp, Grape, Istla, Erdjafa, Ulfrun, and Gija, Ymr, Atla, and Jarnsaxa, are spoken with wonder, for how could one child be born of so many? The skalds say the mystery lies in the sea itself, whose waves are countless yet one, whose daughters are many yet united. From such a womb came Heimdall, radiant and mighty, a son not of one stream but of the whole tide. The 9 sisters bore him at the world's edge, where sea meets sky and the winds are wild. There he was swaddled not in cloth but in the forces of nature itself. Earth gave him strength of stone, sea gave him the flowing endurance of waves, and sky gave him clarity and far-seeing eyes. Fire kindled his spirit, wind sharpened his hearing, and the sun poured brightness into his form until he shone fairer than any other god. Thus was Heimdall shaped, nourished by all elements, a guardian born of the world's bones and breath. It is said that he drank the might of the sea at his birth, for he needed no milk of mother nor care of father. Instead he was nurtured by the primal powers, so that from the first he stood apart from gods and men. No other among the Aesir could claim 9 mothers, nor could they claim such purity of strength, for in him was mingled no weakness nor shadow of doubt. The tales tell also that his golden teeth, shining like the dawn, were a gift from the sea maidens who bore him. They set in him brightness unyielding, so that wherever he smiled, darkness faltered. His horn, Gyllerhorn, too, was laid beside him in infancy, as though fate had chosen from the first that he would one day sound it at the end of all things. From the edge of the sea he came to dwell among the Aesir, and though he was youngest in years, he seemed eldest in wisdom, for his birth had taught him endurance beyond all measure. He was set as watchman, not by chance but by right, for who better to guard the bridge of heaven than one born of 9 guardians of the sea? Thus Heimdall's origin was remembered with awe. In him the power of the waves, the steadfastness of the earth, and the brightness of the heavens were bound. He was no ordinary god, but a son of many, and through him the guardianship of Asgard was assured. His destiny, however, would prove as strange as his birth, for not only was he sentinel of the gods, but also giver of order among men, and foe to Loki, the breaker of bonds. Though Heimdall was watchman of the gods, his care extended also to humankind. For the skalds tell of a time when he left Himinbjörg and walked the green earth, to see how men fared in Midgard. He wandered in secret, taking the name Rígr, clothed in a cloak of travel, bearing neither helm nor horn. Yet his brightness could not be concealed, for wherever he went the hearth fires seemed to burn clearer, and the eyes of men and women shone with sudden sharpness when they looked upon him. First he came to a poor dwelling, the hut of a weary couple, I and Edda. Their bread was coarse, their hands calloused, their bed of straw. Heimdall sat at their board and shared their meager fare. 3 nights he lay with them, and when he departed, a child was born, Rll, the ancestor of thralls, whose lot was toil. His hands were knotty, his back bent, his skin rough as bark, and from him came the servants who labor in the fields and forests, shaping the earth by sweat. Next Heimdall came to a homestead of middling folk, Afi and Amma. Their house was strong, their table well set, their clothes neat though plain. Again he stayed 3 nights, and again a child was born, Karl, forefather of freemen. His hair was ruddy, his eyes keen, his limbs sturdy. From him sprang the farmers and craftsmen, the builders and traders, who shaped Midgard's life with skill and diligence. Last Heimdall came to a great hall, the dwelling of fair and Mir. Richly arrayed were they, their boards laden with meat, their garments bright with color. With them too he stayed 3 nights, and when he departed their child was born, Jarl, lord of men. His hair was fair, his face noble, his eyes bright as the sky. He grew swiftly in strength and wisdom, learned the arts of war, tamed the horse, wielded the bow, and studied the runes. From him came the noble line, the rulers and warriors who governed lands and led men into battle. Thus did Heimdall, in secret and in silence, shape the order of humankind. He gave to them their classes, thralls, freemen, and nobles, and taught each their rightful work. Yet his gift was not bondage, but balance. For he who was born of 9 mothers, who knew endurance and vigilance, saw that the world itself must stand upon many pillars. The skalds say that Jarl, son of the noble house, was later taught by Rígr himself the deepest secrets of rulership, the lore of runes, and the art of justice. And so kings traced their line to Heimdall, claiming his blood and his wisdom. In this way the shining god was not only guardian of Asgard, but also father of Midgard's order. He was the one who gave to men their place, their work, and their honor. And though his deeds upon earth were veiled in myth, every hearth fire remembered Rígr, the wanderer whose visit gave shape to the lives of men. High at the meeting place of earth and sky, where the rainbow bridge Bifrost arches in fire and light, stands Heimdall's dwelling, Himinbjörg, the heavenly cliffs. From this lofty hall, gleaming white against the heavens, Heimdall keeps his unending watch. The skalds say that no hall was better placed for a sentinel, for from its terraces the whole of the 9 realms can be glimpsed, the shifting seas, the broad earth, the deep forests of Jotunheim, the fiery plain of Muspel, and even the cold mists of Niflheim. Himinbjörg was not a hall of revelry like Valhalla, nor a seat of council like Gladsheim. It was a fortress of sight and sound, standing ever ready against the approach of foes. Yet within, it was not barren. The sagas tell of shining walls, bright with gold, and long feasts where Heimdall sat with his horn resting at his side, drinking the finest mead as his ears swept the horizons. For though his vigil was tireless, the gods honored his post with comfort, lest the guardian grow weary. It was said that Heimdall's hearing was sharpened beyond measure in Himinbjörg. He could catch the creak of a shoe on distant earth, the whisper of a leaf stirring in the forests of men, even the faint rush of a feather in flight across the 9 realms. His sight, too, pierced through the darkness, seeing as well by night as by day. In Himinbjörg he needed less sleep than a bird, less rest than a fish, less stillness than the wind itself. From this high place he kept watch on Bifrost, the bridge of many colors, forged by the gods as a path between realms. Bifrost was strong, woven of fire, water, and air, yet even so it could be broken. Thus Heimdall guarded it against the frost giants, who longed to storm Asgard, and against the fire giants, who would one day march across it in flame. Often, as the skalds told, Odin would come to Himinbjörg to speak with Heimdall, for the All-Father valued his watchman's wisdom. And sometimes Thor himself, in his journeys to Jotunheim, would pass beneath Heimdall's gaze, knowing the sentinel marked his going and return. Yet Heimdall never abandoned his post, he was as constant as the sunrise, and as immovable as stone. Still, there was a quiet majesty to Himinbjörg, for it was not only a fortress but also a symbol. It was the edge of the gods' domain, the threshold of Asgard, and Heimdall's steadfast presence there was a promise, that no foe could come unmarked, that no treachery would go unseen, and that when the day of doom arrived, his horn would sound from those heavenly cliffs, summoning gods and men alike to the final battle. Among all the Aesir, none clashed so often as Heimdall and Loki. The shining guardian and the cunning trickster stood as opposites, one was the ever-watchful sentinel, pure and steadfast, while the other was a shape-shifter, a whisperer of lies, a breaker of bonds. Where Heimdall sought order, Loki sowed chaos. It is no wonder, then, that their feud was bitter, stretching through the ages until their final reckoning at Ragnarök. The skalds tell that in the halls of the gods, during feasts where mead flowed and laughter rang, Loki would sometimes turn his sharp tongue against Heimdall. He mocked him for his ceaseless vigil, calling him weary and joyless, chained forever to his post. But Heimdall, golden-toothed and bright, would answer with calm words, reminding Loki that vigilance was a shield, while deceit was a poison that corroded all it touched. Their words clashed like blades, striking sparks in the ears of those who listened. In one tale, Loki claimed that Heimdall was cursed to serve like a thrall, forever watching while others enjoyed the feast. Heimdall replied that it was better to serve faithfully than to betray kin, better to guard the bridge of gods than to scheme against them in secret. Thus their enmity grew, for Loki's pride could not endure being checked by Heimdall's unwavering truth. Some songs say their quarrels were more than words. At times Loki sought to slip past Heimdall's watch on Bifrost, donning guises of bird or beast, hoping to creep unseen. Yet Heimdall's gaze pierced every cloak, and his ears caught every stir. Always he turned Loki back, ever reminding him that deceit could never triumph over vigilance. Their strife foreshadowed their destiny. For just as Heimdall guarded the gods against the world's end, Loki prepared to bring that end upon them. The trickster knew that one day he would lead the giants against Asgard, and that Heimdall would stand in his way. From this knowledge their rivalry deepened, and each exchange of wits became a rehearsal for the final battle. The poets of old spoke of their feud as a cosmic balance, the light of watchfulness against the shadow of cunning. For Loki's craft was sharp and dangerous, yet Heimdall's clarity was sharper still. And so they circled one another in words and deeds, each awaiting the hour when mocking speech and sharp retorts would no longer suffice, when horn and spear would decide what tongue could not. Thus the enmity between Heimdall and Loki was remembered, not merely as quarrels at feasts, but as a reflection of the deeper struggle between chaos and order, deceit and vigilance, shadow and light. Of all the quarrels between Heimdall and Loki, none was fiercer than the struggle over Brísingamen, the wondrous necklace of Freyja. Forged by dwarves in the depths of the earth, Brísingamen gleamed with the fire of the stars, a treasure beyond compare. It was a symbol of beauty, desire, and power, and Freyja prized it above all things. But Loki, covetous and cunning, could not leave it be. The tale says that under cover of night, Loki slipped into Freyja's chamber. Taking the shape of a fly, he buzzed past her guards and crept to her bedside. There, while the goddess slept, he stole the shining necklace, clasping it in his hand before fleeing into the darkness. But though his theft was secret, it could not pass unnoticed, for Heimdall, the ever-watchful, was swift to learn of it. He pursued Loki across land and sea, the rainbow bridge itself blazing beneath his steps. Loki, unwilling to yield, took the form of a seal, diving into the waves with the necklace held fast. But Heimdall was not to be outdone. He too transformed, his bright form becoming a mighty seal, sleek and strong, plunging into the surf to meet his foe. Beneath the crashing waves they fought, seal against seal, biting and rending, their struggle shaking the sea itself. The necklace shone between them like lightning in the depths, flashing as it passed from one to the other. The waves turned red with the strain of their battle, and the roar of the surf was as the clash of weapons on a field of war. At last Heimdall triumphed. With his strength, born of 9 mothers and the sea itself, he wrenched Brísingamen from Loki's grasp. Rising from the waters, the shining guardian returned the necklace to Freyja, restoring her most beloved treasure. Loki, defeated, slunk away with bitter hatred smoldering in his heart, for once again Heimdall had foiled him. The Skalds remembered this tale not only for its strangeness, with gods taking the shapes of beasts, but also for its deeper meaning. For Brísingamen, like the Rainbow Bridge, was a treasure that bound order to beauty, harmony to the cosmos. Loki, as ever, sought to disrupt and despoil, while Heimdall strove to guard and preserve. Their battle was not only over a necklace but over the balance of the world itself. Thus did Heimdall prove once more his role as protector, not merely of Asgard's gates, but of its treasures, its order, and its very heart. And Freyja, though her tears often fell as gold, rejoiced that her necklace was restored, owing her gratitude to the shining sentinel who watched over gods and goddesses alike. Long did Heimdall stand watch at Himinbjörg, guarding Bifrost with eyes that pierced shadow and ears that heard the softest stir. For ages he waited, Gjallarhorn resting by his side, its voice silent yet heavy with doom. But the Skalds foretold that when the end drew near, when wolves swallowed the sun and moon and the earth shook in its bones, Heimdall would at last lift that horn to his lips and sound the cry that would shatter the stillness of the 9 realms. And so it was at Ragnarök, the twilight of the gods. The signs came as foretold, Fimbulwinter gripped the world in endless cold, kin turned against kin, and bonds of peace broke asunder. From Muspelheim came the fire giants, led by Surtur with his flaming sword. From the sea arose Jormungandr, spewing venom. The dead marched with Hel's host, and the ship Naglfar, built from the nails of the dead, carried giants across the flood. Against this storm of doom, Heimdall stood ready. At the first tremor of the earth, he grasped Gjallarhorn. Lifting it high, he blew with all his might. The sound was vast and terrible, echoing across heaven and earth, ringing through sea and stone, reaching the ears of every god, giant, and mortal. It was the alarm of fate itself, the final battle had come. The Aesir rose, armed for war, and marched to the plain of Rígr, summoned by Heimdall's horn. Yet Heimdall was not only herald but warrior. His foe was none other than Loki, his ancient rival. The two met amid the chaos, where fire and venom clashed, where gods and monsters fell. I, Heimdall, bright and resolute, Loki, sly and hateful. No words passed between them, for their feud had been spoken long before. Now it was to be ended in steel and blood. They fought with a fury that shook the field. Loki's cunning was swift as a serpent strike, his blows darting and cruel. But Heimdall's strength was born of the 9 mothers, his endurance of sea and sky, his clarity unbroken. Their weapons flashed, their bodies clashed, and each struck the other with wounds that no healing could mend. At last, both fell. Loki, breaker of oaths, brought down the shining watchman. And Heimdall, guardian of the gods, dealt death to the trickster. So their feud, which had smoldered since the dawn of the worlds, ended in mutual ruin. The sentinel who had stood so long was silenced, his horn no longer raised. Yet his duty was fulfilled, for his blast had summoned the gods to their fate, and his struggle had struck down the betrayer. The poets wept to tell it, for Heimdall was beloved, a beacon of vigilance, a shield at Asgard's edge. In his fall lay the sorrow of endings, yet also the nobility of sacrifice. For though he died, his watch endured in memory. The world that perished gave way to one reborn, and in the new dawn, men remembered the shining god who had stood until the last hour, unyielding against the storm. When the skalds set down their songs and the poets wove their verses, Heimdall stood not only as a god of the myths but also as a symbol of the virtues most treasured in the north. Though his death came at Ragnarök, his spirit lived on in the memory of men, for the shining guardian was more than a character in tales, he was the very embodiment of vigilance, purity, and the strength to endure until the end. In the halls of chieftains, when warriors swore oaths by fire and steel, they sometimes invoked Heimdall, for he was the unbroken watcher who allowed no deception to slip past his gaze. When kings traced their lineages, they claimed descent from Rígr, Heimdall's earthly guise, linking their rule to his gift of order among men. To the farmers tilling the soil, his story of RLL, Karl, and Jarl explained the structure of society, setting each man's place in the world as if ordained by the gods. Thus Heimdall's legacy reached into the very fabric of daily life. His horn, Gjallarhorn, too, lingered in memory. Though in myth it was blown only once to herald the world's end, in ritual and imagination it became the sound of awakening, of summons, of boundaries crossed. Some whispered that echoes of it were heard in the crash of waves or in the sudden call of a ram's horn across the fjords. To hear such a sound was to remember the god who never slept, the guardian who stood watch at the bridge of heaven. In him men saw the balance to Loki's cunning. For every age has its deceivers, its tricksters who delight in breaking bonds and twisting truth. But every age also yearns for its watchman, the one who stands unshaken, who hears lies before they are spoken and sees treachery before it strikes. Heimdall filled that place in the old songs, and in him people found reassurance that vigilance and clarity could overcome deceit. Even in death, his role was not forgotten. Though he and Loki struck each other down, the skalds knew that such endings were not defeat but fulfillment. For Heimdall's watch had always pointed to this hour, when his horn would rouse the gods for their final stand. He did not falter, nor did he waver. He fulfilled his destiny as surely as the dawn follows night. Thus in story and symbol, Heimdall remained, the whitest of the Aesir, the golden-toothed, the son of 9 mothers, the guardian of Bifrost, the father of mankind's order, the foe of Loki, and the herald of Ragnarök. His image gleamed in the sagas like a star above the storm, a reminder that even in the face of doom, steadfastness is a victory of its own. And so, long after his horn's blast faded, Heimdall endured, in the songs of poets, in the memory of the people, and in the eternal image of a watchman who never ceased to keep guard.